Today, I would like to discuss the optimal temperature range for moxibustion that ensures both maximal therapeutic efficacy and patient safety. Moxibustion is a representative traditional medical technique in East Asian medicine in which moxifloss is placed on specific acupuncture points and ignited, delivering controlled thermal stimulation to regulate physiological functions and treat various disorders. The primary reason for using moxifloss in moxibustion lies in its distinctive combustion properties. It burns slowly, evenly, and without producing an open flame. This gradual smoldering allows for precise control of the heating temperature and provides sufficient time for thermal stimulation to reach deeper tissues beneath the skin. Therefore, the use of moxifloss in moxibustion is better understood as a method optimized for safe and efficient heat delivery based on its combustion characteristics, rather than for any inherent pharmacological effect. Plant-derived fibers generally release volatile gases during thermal decomposition and leave char-like residues. However, moxifloss produces relatively few volatile gases, and the char formed during the initial combustion undergoes gradual oxidation upon exposure to oxygen, allowing it to smolder slowly without generating an open flame, much like charcoal. In addition, the drying process of Artemisia argi reduces the content of essential oils, leaving only a small amount of volatile constituents in the moxifloss, which further prevents flame formation. The material also consists of long, fine fibers loosely aggregated with abundant internal air spaces and low density, a structure that inhibits rapid chain combustion. In contrast, materials such as wood shavings or paper ignite instantly and produce rapid temperature spikes, making it difficult to deliver a stable, therapeutically appropriate level of heat to an acupuncture point. Consequently, moxifloss remains an ideal heat source for moxibustion. It burns slowly and steadily, its size and density can be easily adjusted, and it enables precise control of the thermal stimulus delivered to the target acupoint. This unique combination of properties explains why moxifloss continues to be widely used in contemporary moxibustion practice. The application of moxifloss in moxibustion can be categorized into several distinct techniques. The most traditional form is direct moxibustion, in which a small cone of moxa is placed directly on the skin. Direct moxibustion is further divided into scarring and non-scarring methods. Non-scarring moxibustion employs lower temperatures and shorter heating times to avoid tissue injury. However, direct moxibustion inherently carries a substantial risk of burns. To reduce this risk, indirect moxibustion was developed, in which a mediating substance, such as ginger, garlic, aconite, or salt, is placed between the moxa and the skin to buffer the transmitted heat. Although some practitioners attribute additional pharmacological effects to these materials, the use of neutral substances like salt or clay suggests that the principal purpose of indirect moxibustion is thermal moderation and improved safety, rather than medicinal action. Following the introduction of indirect methods, the moxa stick technique, izujiu, emerged as a further refinement, allowing more precise temperature control. In this method, moxifloss is rolled into a cigar-like stick, ignited, and held near the skin so that heat is delivered primarily through radiant warming rather than direct contact. Moxa sticks may be composed solely of pure moxifloss or blended with herbal ingredients. Another variant is the canister moxibustion method, in which burning moxifloss is placed inside a container that is then applied over an acupoint. This setup utilizes radiative, conductive, and convective heat to warm a larger surface area. Finally, warm needle moxibustion combines acupuncture with thermal stimulation by attaching a small piece of burning moxifloss to the needle handle, heating the acupoint using the radiant heat produced by the burning moxa. Collectively, these techniques illustrate the progressive development of moxibustion methods centered on moxifloss, each designed to optimize temperature regulation and the mode of thermal delivery while enhancing safety and therapeutic precision. Before discussing the optimal temperature for moxibustion, it is important to consider the major modes of heat transfer. The method by which heat is transmitted significantly influences the risk of thermal injury. Conduction, in which a hot object directly contacts the skin, carries the highest risk of burns, followed by convection, where heat is transferred through hot air or liquid. In contrast, radiant heat, transmitted through electromagnetic waves, presents the lowest risk of tissue damage. This principle explains the historical evolution of Moxibustion techniques, from methods involving direct contact with burning moxa to approaches that deliver heat primarily through radiation, to achieve safer and more controlled thermal stimulation. In traditional East Asian medicine, representative therapeutic approaches that stimulate the body surface to treat disease include acupuncture, moxibustion, and herbal patch therapy. These three methods share a common characteristic. They intentionally employ mild, controlled tissue injury as a form of noxious stimulus. Specifically, acupuncture provides a mechanical stimulus through needle insertion, moxibustion delivers a thermal stimulus via intense heat, and herbal patch therapy induces a chemical stimulus using irritant herbal substances. Thus, external therapeutic strategies in traditional medicine have been systematically categorized and applied according to the nature of the stimulus: mechanical, thermal, or chemical. Why, then, do external therapeutic modalities such as acupuncture and moxibustion intentionally employ noxious stimuli strong enough to cause minor tissue injury? The rationale lies in the fact that such stimuli possess the capacity to damage or disrupt tissue, thereby triggering a wide range of immediate defensive and reparative responses within the body. By deliberately inducing mild and localized injury, these therapies activate and harness the body's inherent healing mechanisms and physiological defense systems. In this sense, external treatments function as interventions designed to stimulate and amplify the body's natural self-repair processes through controlled, low-grade tissue disruption. When the body perceives a noxious stimulus, it immediately activates the autonomic nervous system, initiating the fight-or-flight response. This response is not limited to local changes, such as increased heart rate or accelerated respiration. Rather, it engages a wide array of systemic defensive and physiological mechanisms aimed at survival. Through this process, external therapeutic stimuli, such as heat from moxibustion or needle insertion, effectively recruit the body's fundamental survival systems, thereby assisting in disease resolution and tissue protection. Responses to noxious stimuli include avoidance reflexes and emotional reactions. However, from a therapeutic perspective, the most critical response is inflammation. Pain experienced during the inflammatory process serves to prevent further tissue damage, but more importantly, it initiates and promotes the repair of injured tissues. In this context, external therapies such as acupuncture and moxibustion deliberately induce minor tissue injury to trigger an inflammatory response, thereby facilitating tissue recovery and regeneration and contributing to the overall therapeutic effect. The human body surface is equipped with specialized sensory receptors that respond to various stimuli, known as TRP channels. These receptors illustrate the types of stimuli utilized in traditional East Asian external therapies. For instance, chemical stimuli, as applied in herbal patch therapy, activate TRPV1 and TRPA1 receptors, whereas mechanical stimuli, such as those used in acupuncture, engage TRPA1 and TRPV4. In particular, the thermal stimulus produced during moxibustion activates all four receptors from TRPV1 to TRPV4, while cold stimuli primarily stimulate TRPM8 and TRPA1. This evidence indicates that traditional external therapies are systematically designed to target specific receptors in the human body, thereby eliciting controlled physiological responses. Examining the activation temperatures of the four TRP receptors responsive to heat, from TRPV1 to TRPV4 reveals their distinct functional roles. TRPV3 and TRPV4 are activated within a warm temperature range of approximately 27 degrees Celsius to 39 degrees Celsius, detecting relatively mild heat. In contrast, TRPV1 is activated at around 43 degrees Celsius and TRPV2 at approximately 52 degrees Celsius, sensing noxious thermal stimuli capable of causing actual tissue injury. Consequently, therapeutic modalities that employ injurious heat, such as moxibustion, primarily aim to stimulate TRPV1 and TRPV2 to elicit targeted physiological responses. Thermal receptors in the human body are activated across a range of temperatures from approximately 17 degrees Celsius to 52 degrees Celsius, allowing precise modulation of various sensory responses. These temperature-dependent activation profiles are critical for determining therapeutic targets. For example, in cryotherapy, temperatures below 17 degrees Celsius activate TRPA1 receptors, inducing cold-related pain and eliciting therapeutic responses. In contrast, Moxibustion employs heat rising to around 52 degrees Celsius to activate TRPV2 receptors, generating strong noxious thermal sensations. Therefore, external therapies in traditional East Asian medicine do not merely apply heat or cold. They are carefully calibrated to stimulate specific receptors at precise temperatures. In this context, Moxibustion is a therapy designed to deliver injurious thermal stimuli near the upper activation threshold of TRPV2, optimizing its therapeutic effect. Hot packs used for pain relief typically operate within a temperature range of approximately 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, similar to that of a warm bath. Within this range, TRPV1, the body's primary heat-sensitive receptor, is activated, producing sensations of warmth and providing superficial analgesic effects. However, since this temperature does not reach the 52 degrees Celsius threshold required to activate TRPV2, fundamental therapeutic effects, such as the promotion of cell growth and migration or the activation of immune functions, cannot be expected. The temperature of Moxibustion varies depending on the size and density of the moxa cone. Typically, the internal temperature of burning moxa reaches approximately 480 to 620 degrees Celsius, while the surface in direct contact with the skin ranges from 55 to 100 degrees Celsius. These temperatures exceed the 52 degrees Celsius threshold required to activate TRPV2, allowing Moxibustion to stimulate both TRPV1 and TRPV2 receptors simultaneously. This dual activation is a key factor explaining the superior therapeutic effects of Moxibustion compared to conventional hot packs. Hot packs, operating at 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, only activate TRPV1, providing superficial analgesia, whereas Moxibustion can also engage TRPV2, promoting cellular growth, immune function, and tissue repair, yielding deeper and more fundamental therapeutic outcomes. However, the high temperatures involved carry a risk of burns. To maximize therapeutic effects while minimizing skin injury, Moxibustion employs a strategy of brief exposure to high temperatures. Unlike hot packs, which rely on lower temperatures over prolonged periods, Moxibustion rapidly activates TRPV2 above 52 degrees Celsius while keeping exposure time short, thereby achieving both efficacy and safety. The primary adverse effect to be cautious of in Moxibustion therapy is burn injury. Burns occur as a result of the combined influence of three factors: heating temperature, exposure duration, and contact area, making precise control of these parameters essential. The relationship between temperature, exposure time, and burn risk demonstrates a nonlinear pattern. For instance, at 44 degrees Celsius, skin exposure for approximately 6 hours is required to induce a burn, whereas at 48 degrees Celsius, a burn can occur within about 5 minutes, at 51 degrees Celsius within 2 minutes, and at 60 degrees Celsius in just a few seconds. Therefore, while temperatures around 43 degrees Celsius, sufficient to activate TRPV1, pose relatively low burn risk even with prolonged exposure, temperatures near 52 degrees Celsius, which activate TRPV2, can induce burns with less than 10 seconds of exposure. From the perspective of nociceptor activation, this indicates that mild thermal stimulation, around 43 degrees Celsius, allows relatively long exposure times, greater than or equal to 1 hour, with minimal risk, whereas high-temperature stimulation, around 52 degrees Celsius, rapidly exceeds tissue tolerance, with burns occurring after only a few seconds. These observations highlight that, in heat-based therapies or experimental applications, both temperature and exposure duration are critical parameters that must be carefully managed to ensure safety. Therefore, the optimal target temperature for Moxibustion therapy can be considered approximately 52 degrees Celsius. Due to thermal equilibration, the actual temperature perceived by the skin typically ranges between 48 and 50 degrees Celsius, a range sufficient to activate TRPV1 and TRPV2 receptors as well as to engage diffuse noxious inhibitory controls, DNIC. However, 52 degrees Celsius falls within a risk zone for burns, necessitating extremely brief exposure times, typically less than a few seconds. Minimizing the contact area is also critical to enhance safety. In conclusion, the most effective and safe principle of Moxibustion is to apply high-temperature stimulation, 52 degrees C, over a small area for a very short duration, thereby maximizing therapeutic efficacy while minimizing the risk of tissue injury. The primary challenge of Moxibustion lies in the difficulty of precisely controlling the temperature, which consequently increases the risk of burns. In addition, tar residues produced during the combustion of moxa can cause skin irritation, allergic reactions, or hyperpigmentation. The smoke generated during moxa burning also poses issues. Some patients may experience respiratory irritation, and the distinctive odor of Moxibustion can linger on clothing or in clinical environments, which has become a growing concern. Furthermore, Moxibustion treatment typically involves applying 3 to 7 moxa cones consecutively, requiring practitioners to remain beside the patient for 10 to 20 minutes, replacing each cone as it burns, a labor-intensive process. In summary, while Moxibustion offers notable therapeutic efficacy, it is associated with several drawbacks, including challenges in temperature regulation, burn risk, smoke and odor exposure, and procedural inconvenience. To address the limitations of traditional Moxibustion using MoxaFloss, a modern form of Moxibustion incorporating electrical and semiconductor technologies has been developed. A representative device is the K-Electromoxa. Unlike traditional Moxibustion, this device eliminates the risk of burns and prevents moxa-related skin reactions. It also produces no smoke or odor, allowing safe use without concerns of respiratory irritation or lingering smell. In essence, the K-Electromoxa preserves the therapeutic efficacy of traditional Moxibustion while substantially enhancing both safety and convenience, representing a modernized approach to this traditional therapy. The K-Electromoxa offers 4 selectable temperature settings, allowing users to choose among 45 degrees Celsius, 47 degrees Celsius, or 49 degrees Celsius. The set temperature corresponds directly to the actual temperature experienced by the skin. For example, a setting of 49 degrees Celsius results in the skin reaching approximately 49 degrees Celsius. This produces an effect comparable to traditional Moxibustion heated to around 52 degrees Celsius, sufficient to activate TRPV2 and elicit mild pricking sensations. For procedures requiring selective thermal destruction of tissue, such as warts or corns, the device's user mode allows temperatures up to 57 degrees Celsius. Additionally, the K-Electromoxa supports automatic continuous Moxibustion. Once configured, it can perform consecutive applications from 1 up to 100 cones without further manual intervention, significantly enhancing procedural convenience. In summary, the K-Electromoxa represents a modern Moxibustion device that combines precise temperature control, enhanced safety, and automated continuous operation, preserving the therapeutic efficacy of traditional Moxibustion while optimizing usability. In typical use, a single application of the K-Electromoxa requires approximately 3 minutes, including both the heating and cooling phases. This design ensures sufficient cooling time after each heating cycle, preventing heat accumulation and reducing the risk of burns. If reheating occurs in rapid succession, while therapeutic effects may be enhanced, accumulated heat and an increased number of applications could pose a risk similar to low-temperature burns. Therefore, allowing adequate cooling between applications is a critical safety measure in Moxibustion therapy. In summary, K-Electromoxa was developed as an innovative temperature-controlled Moxibustion therapy that delivers high-heat stimulation capable of activating both TRPV1 and TRPV2, while scientifically regulating temperature, stimulation time, and contact area to minimize the risk of burns. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for watching.